Hey, what's up, geeks? Darron Brown here, and in this video I'm going to discuss what are the steps to take to becoming a software engineer. Now, before I actually give you those steps, I'm going to go over the route that I took to becoming a software developer and then let you guys know what I would have done differently, and that's basically what I would recommend to you. So I'm going to try not to leave anything out. Now, the first thing I actually did when I became a software engineer is the first thing I did, I bought a book. It was Swift 5. All right, and Swift is basically the language used to build iOS applications. Now, what I did was I didn't know the Swift language, but I went straight into developing. So whatever application was within that book, I just followed the steps within that book. It was a pretty thick book, and then I went from there building the applications. Now, these apps weren't apps that I actually designed and thought of myself. They were just apps that were in the book. And I was like, okay, I'm going to mimic that, and I'm going to go through the app building process and the deployment process. And I struggled because no matter how hard I tried, I still kept building these things. I kept copying what was inside some of these courses, but I did not have the skills to be creative on my own. Like, I couldn't take what I learned in that book and build something. So the next step after that I took was like, okay, maybe mobile isn't the route. Maybe I'm doing it too fast. I need to go to web. So I did exactly the same thing on the website. I went ahead and then I started looking at bought books that basically went over web design, and then I mimicked what was in those books. Honestly, it's easier to understand the web than it is mobile, and that's because web has been around longer than mobile, so there's more support on the internet. So actually, the web went a little bit faster for me. Now, the thing that also made web cool is that when they have the inspector. So the inspector, when you're on a website, you can actually do you can toggle developer mode. And that basically constructs the website that you're on. You can see how that website was completely built. So I would go to a website like Facebook or anything else, and I would just copy the code and then put it in my IDE or text editor, and then just get it to show on my screen. So that was the biggest thing for me, just taking something, seeing it on the screen, and then that helped me build my confidence. So I went with HTML and CSS. The websites that I built, I didn't even host these websites, but the projects that I built, the main thing was being able to put something on the screen. I wanted to understand how HTML worked with CSS, and what was the relationship between those two, and how things were able to display on that screen. So that was the main, that was the next step for me. Now, after I went that route, I went back to mobile, and React Native was something that had just came out. So I started coding mobile apps. That was my passion. So I started coding mobile apps with React Native, and React Native was a lot. It could have been the fact that I was more excited about mobile app development, or it could have just been easier. But I think because I understood the relationship between HTML and CSS, learning React Native was a lot easier for me because it's all front end stuff. And then basically JavaScript, if you know JavaScript, the language is built for the web, and React Native is built with JavaScript. So I was able to actually take some of those JavaScript concepts, those components, and bring them into React Native. So my process for React Native was a lot more smoother, a lot more faster, but I still struggled when it came to actually having my components speak to each other, transferring information, updating the state, understanding how a database worked with a mobile application, and just that in general. I was really good at the design process and the building process, but I didn't fully understand exactly what was going on. So the next step after that, because I actually built a pretty big application, it just wasn't functional. So I needed to actually improve my functional programming. And then I was learning Java and JavaScript at the same time. That's because I was in my master's program. And I started learning that a little bit before my master's program, but I was learning that at the same time because the book that I had at that time was a Java book, and I also had I didn't have a JavaScript book. I took JavaScript courses, and I had a JavaScript book. I had a JavaScript courses, and I had the Java book. So I was learning both of those because I knew my master's program, when I got enrolled, I was going to take a course in Java, and I wanted to be prepared. So I was using the skills that I learned in Java and basically converting that to JavaScript. Now, Once I started getting comfortable with functional programming, looping, the for loops, the while loops, variables, all these things, understanding how that worked, and I kid you not, it took me months because I was doing all this on my own. I didn't have any kind of mentor. I was doing a lot of web searching, and then, all this was completely new to me, engineering. So I got good at doing, like, if you're reading a book and it tells you, like, oh, sort this data or do this and whatnot, and I would do that, but I had no idea how this applied to a web or mobile application. So from there, it took me, I actually built a social media application towards the end of my my master's program, and I had a good idea of how applications are supposed to work, how data works at the back end, but I still was insecure when it came to my functional programming. And I actually got most of my functional programming at my first job. And when I was working with other engineers and I had other engineers critique my code, and then we would have these coding challenges, it just, over time, it started to make sense. Like, I can look at an application, somebody can give me a mobile app idea, I can look at the idea, I understand what data the application is going to need, what kind of screens the application is going to need, and then I can also understand what types of algorithms or any types of functions that are going to have to take place for the application to actually work. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm pretty confident that I can build anything now. All right. So that's it for, like, my story. So now let me discuss the steps that I wish I would have taken. All right, so I wrote down these steps. So I'm going to just go back and forth what I have put down right here. All right. So the first thing I would have decided, which is what I actually did, what is the end goal? So what I mean by end goal, what do you ultimately want to do, or what do you ultimately want as a developer? Do you want to be a mobile developer? Do you want to be a web developer? Do you want to do back-end work? Do you want to work with APIs? Do you want to work with data? Are you good at math? These are important questions because in school, people think because you go to, like, computer science or something like that, like, you have the skills to be an engineer. No, schools, they primarily use languages that don't change. But if you guys basically have some common sense, we all know that your mobile phone always gets updated every year. Technology has changed a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. So tech is always changing. So if you're a mobile developer, there's a good chance that there'll be a new tool next year, a new tool the year after that, and you're going to have to keep up with it. So if you're a mobile developer, do you have the commitment and the work ethic to continue to learn a new skill, a new tool? And that's it's not too hard, because once you know the functional programming, you understand functional programming, you can pretty much learn any kind of language or anything. But the main goal is that you have to have, the main point is basically you have to have an end goal. You have to know where you want to be as a developer, or where you want to be in your life. After this COVID thing ends, my goal was to actually do I was going to do a road trip around the country, but honestly, since I'm a remote developer, I figured why not go live in a few countries, so that's what I plan on doing. Once this is lifted, I have the freedom to just do what I want to do. So that's my goal. I want to be a mobile developer, and I want to have freedom of my time, so yeah, figure that out first before you move forward. And the next part is, it's hand in hand with the goal. It's basically knowing what you want, knowing what you're doing. What do you see yourself really doing? Do you have a background in design? If you have a background in design, it means you have a good eye for detail, a good eye probably for sound. You really are invested in the user experience. If you're one of those people who just have really good style, you're more, you can connect with people, you might want to do the front end stuff. If you're one of those people that are just, like I said, more technical, you're good at math, you may want to do something in the background, you may want to do some kind of like data analytics. So that kind of touches base with the first point. But again, you just have to know exactly, like, where you want to be, what your goal is, and basically what you are comfortable doing. Now, once you've decided what it is that you want to do, this is what I would have done. Now, I said that I actually bought a book and I just started building projects, working with different tools, frameworks, and it was overwhelming for me. So it may be boring, but I would strongly advise you to pick a language. Once you figured out your goal, what kind of developer you want to be, front end, back end, whatever, check out the languages that are tied to the front end or the back end. And then from there, I would get a book on that language. I would understand all the built-in functions tied into that language. And then I would also just do a lot of coding challenges. You know, I have the coding thing that I post out every Monday. I do that so I can give you guys an idea of how to use data and how to think through an algorithm. So that's what I would recommend. I would recommend choosing the language. After you chose that language, I would just do a few algorithms. Well, for a while, I would just do a bunch of coding algorithms, make sure I have a strong understanding of that language, and then go from there. Okay, trying to escape the sun right now. Now, once you've chosen a language, the next step is choosing a framework. With JavaScript, you can choose something like Angular, you can choose something like React Native. Those are the main ones. They have Vue, and there may be something else out there that I'm just missing. But once you basically decide the language you want to do, choose a framework and then start building projects from there. You know, get an idea of how that framework works, and then start building. If I was you, what I would do once I picked my language, I would look up a few companies and I would see what framework was in highest demand. Whatever framework was in highest demand around that language. Now, of course, once you got your frameworks chosen, the next step after that is basically to build projects. So you want to build, I'm going to say at least at max 3 projects. And honestly, if you don't even have a college degree in this stuff, and you want to have a career change and whatnot, you're working as on those kind of social work or something like that. There's people that I've worked with who went that route. They didn't even go to school for computer science. They didn't even start no kind of anything technical. They had like, I don't know, not no librarian jobs, but something non-technical. And honestly, they just built projects. They built projects, and a lot of these companies, you'll have a lot of interviews. You won't get some callbacks because of you don't have that, the technical background. But the demand for developers is so high that it's promised that you'll find a position. So I wouldn't even concern that. I would just start building projects, and then I would actually create a website where I can host my projects, and then you can actually see, the person can actually see who you are, they can see what you built, and then you can explain the tools that you use to actually build that project. Alright, so that's it for this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you check out the website GeekMODE.tech. I have my courses there, I have my blog there. I'm sure you're interested in it. You'll find something interested at that website. And then also check out my social media. Anyways, I'll catch you later. Peace. Whew.